Hello and welcome back everybody to 12 Days of Anime. Today we are doing day 3 of 12 Days of Anime, and I'm gonna talk about an anime that aired earlier this year, which was Hinamatsuri, which aired during the spring season of 2018. And honestly, this anime really meant a lot to me this year because it is, firstly, it is easily, I would say, the second best anime we've had this year, in my opinion, of course. But it also gave us a really important lesson that some people may not, need, but some others definitely do, looking at how the real world operates. There's always gonna be like some people who need this lesson, some people who already have this lesson taught from an early age. Me personally didn't really need this, but to have this being so well viewed and well presented in an anime, it really made me happy because, quite frankly, I didn't really grow up as a rich kid, and seeing how Hinamatsuri was able to portray one side of the story as Hina, who is living with a very rich man, and then you have a very different side of the story when it's following Anzu, who is actually on the very opposite end of that spectrum. She's actually literally a hobo. She's living outside in the street along with some other old people who don't have anywhere to live. She's having to learn how to live without having an income, without having a proper home. And that is something that I think a lot of people need to know. And I think a lot of people need to see just what it's like to not have anywhere to live, to not have a roof over your head and stuff like that. I think that is quite possibly the best anime this year in terms of life lessons. So yeah, let's talk about that. And let's start with Hina, because obviously she's the main character of the story. The story really revolves around Hina. The story is called Hinamatsuri, the Hina festival. And she is a very peculiar character. She doesn't really care too much about much apart from good food. She has this really interesting obsession with a certain food that she wants, and that's about the limit to her character as far as desires go. Apart from that, she's really as a curious child, not really carrying so much emotionally. It's more about curiosity and just seeing where life gets you, And she's living with a very rich guy who's part of the mafia, right? So obviously he has a pretty good income, especially since he's pretty high ranked within the mafia. So he's not really at the bottom level, He's quite a well-known dude. Not quite the top dog, but still quite high up. So Hina, she's kind of being spoiled in that regard, in the sense that she has everything essentially. Now, she doesn't really get spoiled like your average child does, in a rich kid home in real life. She doesn't just point at things and she gets it. That's not really how she works, mostly because she doesn't really want anything in particular, she doesn't really care too much about that. But when she does want something, I think once or twice it did occur that she had this sort of spoiled nature where she would actually break stuff if she didn't get what you want. And then you look at the other side of the story, as I said, Anzu, who is the blonde girl who is technically trying to stop Hina and bring her back to where they came from, but she ends up in a society very different from Hina, because Anzu, she ends up not really having anywhere to live. And the first thing that happens really is that she is being acquainted with stealing and being acquainted with this group of homeless people that eventually grows to become her would-be family, her not so biological family. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a small society, a small group of people, and they just hurdle up together and end up becoming sort of a family, which happens with homeless people in real life too, at least in some societies. Of course, it's not going to be the same everywhere, Now, I'm not going to say I have any sort of experience with being homeless. I haven't really had it that bad in my life, but just seeing how Hinamatsuri was able to present, what it's like to live as someone who doesn't have anywhere to live. Granted, it's still fiction, so it's not going to be quite as bad as real life probably, but it is definitely an eye-opener for those who may think everyone has it good and everyone has a really nice life, everyone has a good education, a good job, all that kind of stuff, which is not true. And this could be the result if you don't have that luxury. And Anzu, she obviously at the beginning, she has a really hard time with this lifestyle, but she actually grows into it quite nicely, and that is where I think the heart of the story really sits for me, because quite honestly, although I really do love the stuff with Hina, I think on a more emotional level, you really enjoy Anzu's part of the story a lot more than you do with Hina's, because with Hina it's a lot more comedy based instead of being on a more serious level, whereas with Anzu it's obviously, like I said, it's very emotionally tilted, I guess you could call it, because the story is really trying to show you that there are actually more than one ways of living life. I mean, there's no coincidence that they made Hina live with a rich man and made Anzu live with a homeless group of people. It's obviously meant as an eye-opener, and I really think this anime succeeded quite well in that, and the manga as well probably. I haven't read the manga, however, I definitely suggest, if you haven't, you should watch this anime because it is fucking great. It is so good. It is a slice of life with some supernatural elements involved, so as long as you're not against the idea of a slice of life, then this should be way up your alley, because it is probably the best, well, not quite the best, but it's certainly the second best anime this year in my opinion. However, it is the best eye-opener this year. You're not really gonna find another anime this year that really presents life as we know it in real life better than this anime did. Anyway, that has been day 3 of 12 days of anime. I hope you liked this topic. I really wanted to talk about Hinamatsuri because it is easily, like I said, one of the best anime we've had this year, and I just could not resist talking about this because it was so good. Again, I really suggest you watch this anime if you haven't, because it is just such a life lesson and an eye-opener for those who may not really have that much insight on the life of homeless people in comparison to those who have everything. Anyway, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. This has been Chaotic Plus, and don't forget to check out day 4 of 12 days of anime tomorrow.